Now we're going to get into our presentation. The lovely Lydia is going to give us a peek into Category Quest. So take it away.
Yeah. All right. You should see the ELB Learning logo. Yes?
Yes.
Cool. Well, hello. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Lydia. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a video game designer here at ELB Learning. And I actually got to design Category Quest. I've been working on this since about June or July of last year, but from what I understand, the team was working on this game a little bit before I joined the team. So I'm really excited that I get to show all of our hard work as it's culminated now. Let's begin. All right. You should be hearing music and sound, hopefully. But this is Category Quest. It is a board game inspired by Trivial Pursuit, where your goal is to collect all the categories on the board in as few turns as possible. I am, just so that way you can hear me a little bit better, going to turn off the music. You can see in our settings you can turn on and off the sound effects and the music separately, which I appreciate, especially when I'm playtesting the game a lot. But let's start with registering. You can see here we have team name as an optional registration. That's because we designed this to be a single player experience, but you can actually play this kind of in a cooperative team way like you would for pub trivia. So let's say that I was the one operating the game, but maybe Casey was on my team. So she could help me come up with answers for some of these questions or puzzles and work on that together as a team. I'm actually going to use my my college pub trivia team name Toast for this. Here's our little host of our game board. And first, we're going to pick the color of our game piece. I've personally been really enjoying all the springy colors because it is finally starting to bloom here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So I'm going to pick pink. And today's categories are languages, units of measurement, and the periodic table. So let's take a look at the board. You can see that all of the categories are represented here on the board with their color and with their icon. So if we land on these, we get to draw a card from that category deck. Think of each category as being a deck of cards. So when we land on one, we pull from that deck, we try to answer the card, and if we get it incorrect, we put it in the discard pile to eventually be reshuffled into the deck if we get enough wrong. And if we get it correct, then we get to pull it out of the game. When we get a correct card, that contributes towards completing the category. So you see each of the categories are represented here, and we have these little dots or pips next to them. Each one of those pips represents one card you need to get correct. So for each category in this particular game, we need to get two answers correct before we can complete that category. We also have a couple slots here. That's our inventory for some items that we can get during the game. This particular game, we have the rewind item token. So anytime we land on these spaces, we'll get that item and we can use it during our gameplay. The inventory is only 2 slots, but if you use up your items and you get more, you can refill those slots. The remainder of these tiles are event tiles. They're going to do something cool or fun on the board if we land on them. So hopefully we land on them to show off what it does. But for now, let's start. All right, so first spin, let's see what we can do. Okay, 6. Looks like it's a unit of measurement. So here's our first card, units of measurements. You can see it's a text input question. Um, if you've ever made a game in ELB Learning's training arcade, then you'll probably be familiar with this if you've ever made a trivia game. How many pounds are in a stone? I always forget this. I think it is 14? Yes, okay. Ooh, and you can see here we have an interstitial. So if you've ever made a trivia game, you'll see this as kind of called advanced feedback. That's actually a misnomer we're trying to move away from because really what it is an interstitial. An interstitial is something that occurs in between something else. So in this case, it occurs after we answer a card, but before the next the next turn of our game. With interstitials, you can add images, you can add text, and with that text, you can bold it, underline, italicize, and I actually really like the fact that you can add hyperlinks because I quoted a section of this Wikipedia page and I can link directly to the source. Makes my little history major heart happy. All right. So we've got one card correct. You can see next to the units of measurement category, one of the pips is filled. So we just need one more correct answer in this category to obtain it, to win it. Let's see what we get. Ooh, awesome. Okay, more units of measurement. How many ounces are in a pound? As my dad would always say, a pint, a pound, the world around. So that's 16 ounces. Awesome. You'll notice we also have this little bar here, and beforehand it actually, at the previous question, it actually ran all the way to 0. What's interesting about that is in Trivia or in Jeopardy and some other games you might have played, that would be a timer, right? And once it hits 0, then you've lost your chance to answer. That's actually not what it is in this game because we wanted to have more opportunities and more space for team play, we want people to actually have time to, read the question and talk to each other about it. So, what we decided to do is instead of it being a hard cutoff timer, so when it hits 0, it takes your answer submission, and if you didn't answer, that's then you don't get then you don't get the answer correct. Instead, it is just if you answer within that time period, the remaining time is added as a time bonus. But if it hits 0, that's fine. You just don't get the time bonus. This allows, people who are more competitive with themselves or with others to be able to try and get that quick recall going, try to see how much quicker they can answer things, how much quicker they can pull that information without disadvantaging team play. We want to reward people for actually talking to each other, right? But also because timers are not accessible at all. So this gives breathing room for people who use screen readers, people with processing or reading disabilities, people who are taking this game or playing this game who are not native speakers of the language that the game is in. A lot of people benefit, but we also are rewarding, that kind of quick recall. Here we have another interstitial. You could see this one just has text. And regardless of whether you get the answer correct or incorrect, the interstitial will always appear. So we actually answered pretty quickly. We'll get a little bit of a time bonus for that last question. But for now, we have completed a category, which is awesome. Whenever you complete a category, you get one of these mid-game leaderboards so you can see where you are in relation to other people who have played the game. This is based on your turn number, so however many turns into the game you are, this is how far other folks were at this point in the game. So you can see here we are, toast, the little pink bar. We finished the units of measurement. It looks like whoever Resourceful Tiger and Westward are, their first category they actually finished was the language one. And they have a little bit more points than we do, probably. All right, let's continue. But before we continue, notice that the minty green category is now gone. It's got these little zoomy tiles because we filled in all the pips, filled in the category. We really wanted to make a game that you could play multiple times, but have enough time to really afford to do that, right? People are very busy. Training usually doesn't get slotted into your workday as often as it should, or we would want it to be. And when we started looking at Trivial Pursuit and looking at other board games, we found that gets to a point where you have to land on one tile and then a random chance in a spinner or dice just ends up artificially extending the game and getting kind of frustrating and dull. So we added these zoom tiles in an attempt to make sure the game keeps moving, so you're always moving towards the goal of finishing the game, finishing the categories. Let's spin though. I love that the wild tiles update to show the categories that are remaining. So you can see the little minty stripe is gone too. That I'm really pleased our programmers were able to do. So we are at our first crossroads. We have 3 spaces we can move left. We could either go up and around back here, or we could go directly left. I think I want to go to the left. So we have a periodic table question. So which elements are named after countries? I know Nihonium is named after a country and polonium, but let's say that I thought Seaborgium was maybe named after Sealand. And it's wrong. So this was a multiple select question, multiple select puzzle. You can see Nihonium and polonium are correct, Seaborgium is not. And here is a good example of correct and incorrect feedback. This is another feature that you'll be familiar with if you have ever made a trivia game with ELB Learning's The Training Arcade. If the learner gets an answer incorrect, you can have custom feedback, essentially, a custom space where you can fill in what they'll see when they get it incorrect. So in this case, I decided to put in an explanation of where each element's name comes from. So Nihonium from Nihon, Polonium from Poland, Dubnium from Dubna, Russia, but Seaborgium apparently is named after a person. Other things I like to add in this space are hints, explanations, also tips for remembering, potentially if there's a good mnemonic or if there's a common misconception about that one thing is right, but it's actually wrong. Clarifying that is another really good place to put in the incorrect feedback. Or if you just want to give some custom encouragement, right? Okay, so we got that wrong. Let's try again. 6. Okay. Let's see. We could either land on another periodic table or we could go up north. I'm gonna go to the left. Whee! You can see we're zooming. Okay, select all the noble gases. Let's try neon, radon, and I know hydrogen and chlorine are not. Oh, awesome. So we got that right. Here's a correct feedback. So because I got this correct, I decided to add a explanation as to why these are all noble gases or what it means to be a noble gas. Correct feedback, again, you could also add some custom encouragement or some form of formal learning that is, small, bite-sized. You don't need a full interstitial for it. So lots of ways you can use that. Look, we got one of our pips filled in. Let's spin again. Ooh, our first language one. Okay, we've got a multiple choice. Which fruit do the Japanese call ringo? Which I know is apple. Correct. So if you don't add any correct or incorrect feedback, we have stock responses that just let you know if you got it right, especially if you missed the little icon up there. We have a pip ready. We are 1 away from finishing language and periodic tables. So let's see where we go. Okay. So if we do this, we go 1, 2, 3, potentially. Or we could go 1, 2, 3. I think I want to go north. And let's land on a wild tile. So wild tiles let you choose which card or which deck you want to draw from. So the available decks right now are languages and periodic table because we completed the unit of measurement category. So I think let's do the periodic table again. Oh, okay. So we must have cycled through the deck, and because we got this one wrong previously, it's the only one in the draw pile now. If I remember from last time, it was Nihonium, Polonium, and Dubnium. Awesome. So here's the correct feedback, letting you know that the remaining element is not a place, but is named after a person. And that's one more category done. Let's see how we're doing. Hey, we're in second place right now. Whoever Westward is really killing it. Although they got the language one before we did. Okay, so we almost the whole board is Zoom tiles. We have just language tiles and event tiles left, or item tiles left. And you can see that even the wild tiles, since there's only one category left, they automatically turn into that last category. Here's our handy dandy little zoom in button. Let's spin, see where we go. Okay, language. Which fruit is called manzana in Spanish? I'm going to actually get this wrong. See if we can get a little farther in the board. I want to see if we can hit one of the... Well, we're going to move one space. Never mind. Which fruit do Germans call Pflaume? Forgive me if I'm pronouncing that wrong. I know this. I learned that this is a plum. I really like that name. And the last category is done. We change over all of the tiles. Here we are on the leaderboard, but not over yet. You see, we have one more question we need to answer from the capstone round, from the capstone category. And it looks like our capstone category is about category quest. So actually, in the interest of team play, Casey, would you mind seeing in the chat, and you all in the chat, can you tell me what type of learning you think category quest would be best suited for? Don't worry, we didn't cover this. We're going to cover it more, but I'm curious what all you think.
So far, we've got assessment and review,
Okay.
reinforcement of learning,
Okay.
more review or introduction, memorization, review.
Okay, sounds like mostly review. I did hear an introduction and assessment, so I'm going to submit that. Little mixed results. Yes, it's really good for review, but actually we do not recommend it for introduction and we do not recommend it for assessment. We'll be talking about that a little bit later. In the meantime, notice how you can even add an interstitial to the category, to the capstone category, as well as incorrect or correct feedback. Let's draw with the capstone category. If you get it wrong, you keep drawing cards until you get one correct, and has the same kind of deck cycling as before. Each attempt counts as a turn. So, true or false, when a timer reaches 0, the learner can no longer submit an answer. We're gonna find that out really soon.
We got 2 falses.
Cool, yeah. That is accurate. These are not timers, they're actually time bonuses, so answering within the time limit adds to your score. But in the meantime, we did it! We won! Our little host is going to break down our results in comparison to some other players. So we got all of the questions correct. That's our base score. Looks like we weren't the fastest at answering, kind of comparable to green. Looks like we're really neck and neck with green, actually. A little ahead blue. And yeah, we got the same score as green, but we're just shy of that magenta person. And then here is the final board. Toast and Lightning Bugs tied. Westward is the current reigning champion here, I think because they answered in one fewer turn than us. All right. Ta-da! Thank you for playing. So let me mute that. Here's some stuff that you might have missed. So we didn't actually get to land on any of the items or the teleport tile. We did get to land on the wild tile. So you've seen this, but here's an example of what it looks like when you have 5 categories instead of 3. The rewind token is one of the items. So you land on the tile, it goes into your inventory, and then the next time that you answer a card incorrectly, within the same turn, you can immediately try again. So here, answering wrong, we can use our rewind token and it is consumed, and then give it another shot. Ta-da! So if we had a rewind token, we could have used that maybe in the capstone, and maybe we could have tied with Westward in that last game because every time you use an item, you also get a bonus, and also then we would have taken one less turn than we did earlier. The other event tile is a teleport tile. So when you land on one of those doors, you have the option to teleport to another door tile. Then it will draw a random card from any of the decks that are still active, and if you answer it correctly, you can go to that part of the board. It also adds to your progress. So if you answer it correctly, then you'll have an extra little pip in that category, which is super neat. Before we move on to how to use Category Quest in your training, do you have any questions about the gameplay that you just saw?
Yeah, Jean had a question. How many questions in total do you recommend having for this game?
I recommend having I really would like at least twice as many questions per deck or per category as you are requiring them to answer. So, for example, with this game that we just had, we had three categories, and the requirement per category was two. I would say at least four cards per category, because then if you can see a lot more material every time you play it, you'll get a little bit different experience, but you'll be able to cover a lot more broad information because ideally you're playing it many times.
Awesome.
Any other questions?
Oh, I think I did see another one. There seems to be many rules. How are the instructions given?
Oh, actually, that's right. One second. I forgot something about the tutorial. Let me quickly show this. So we have a tutorial here, and we are hoping to add more to the tutorial in the future. If you want, you can skip it. But one of the things that we have available up in the settings corner here, especially since we have the tiles that are do different things and we are hoping someday to add more, there is a button where you can learn what each of these event tiles or item tiles does. A little quick description. Um, so one is that tutorial at the beginning, walking through directly on the board, where hope is how we are trying to show. That way you're not overloaded with text and you can see things in context. But then also as a resource, because to make clear what each unique thing does. Here we go, right here.
Awesome. A couple more questions. Um,
Mhm.
Valeria is asking about the timing. How long does it take to play? And how many participants? What's the number of participants?
Oh, okay. So the number of participants is kind of infinite at the moment because every you're playing as a single player. So you can have as many people play as are is allowed by your particular account. I believe there is a set number of seats that per account, but I'm not necessarily the best person to ask about that. Um, in terms of how much time it takes, that very much depends on how many cards how many categories you have in the game and how many cards you need to complete that category. So you can imagine a game with three categories where you only have to answer one correctly. That's going to take a lot less time than if you have eight categories and you need each category you need four to answer correctly to complete it. So the time varies widely based on that. It also will depend on the difficulty of your content because if people keep getting it incorrect, they're going to have to keep playing. So there are a lot of variables. We're hoping that as we get more, once we launch it and as we get more player data, we can help narrow down on specific times. It seems that playtime typically is around 20 minutes, depending on, I think we had a four category game with three cards each. But that's one of those things that will very much depend on how you build the game, what your content is, and also when you introduce this game into your training. Because someone who is using this strictly for review will probably be able to play it quicker than if someone was using this as practice and they were still starting to get a hold of the material. Sorry, it's not a very concise answer, but it is a bit, results may vary at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Another quick question from Al, who used the Q&A section, I have to say, which I really appreciate. Thank you so much. It's easier to track there. Is there an option for watch me play as a way of learning with this game?
No, you mean kind of like a spectator mode? Not
Mm-hmm.
at the moment. That's something that we are looking towards in the future because we think it would be really fun, but that is not something that we have at the moment. I think the closest would be if you wanted to watch someone play, then you could get in, either hang over their shoulder, or you could get into a Zoom call or something and have them share their screen, like you would if you were going to have a team, a virtual team dynamic when playing this game. But as far as pure true spectator mode, not at the moment.
And okay, a few more questions that are rolling in. Does this integrate with our LMS and record completions?
Um, yes, we have we can talk a little bit more about that in the when I show you how we make a game. But it does integrate with Scorm and Docebo, and it is otherwise you can embed it into any place where you can physically like embed a game.
Awesome. And then I think we just have one more from Jean. Thank you so much for dropping that in the Q&A section. What would you recommend for number of categories and number of questions, just as like a best practice?
Yeah, I would say probably between 3 to 6 is a for the number of categories. And then as far as number of questions or cards per category, I would probably do 2 to 4. I think that is a nice sweet spot where start having, you're able to start making decisions between like, oh, do I want to go over this direction and complete a category versus do I want to go over here and maybe get an item that will then help me with those categories that are harder. You can start to differentiate between them a bit more. But it's not so granular that it's a labor on the content maker to figure out exactly what each information lies within each category. And also, then it doesn't drag on nearly as long. Because that's the thing is also the more categories you add and the more cards that you're required to make in order to have a fulfilling game, that's also a lot of content that you're putting on the person making the game. And I think that yeah, 3 to 6 categories and 2 to 4 cards is a pretty good sweet spot both for player and for author.
Wonderful. One more question for now, and you guys please feel free to continue to drop them in the Q&A section, and then we'll let Lydia move on with the presentation. We'll have another opportunity to ask questions. If you're hosting a training and use this game, will you, as the host, be notified when all teams complete their board?
Oh, I do not believe. I think that would require true instructor-led functionality. I would need to double check that with the team, but I think the answer at the moment is no. We don't have this as a instructor-led game at the moment, and I think that would need to be, if there was going to be any form of that kind of structure, it would have to have that functionality, which it doesn't have at the moment. So actually, Casey, would you mind keeping that question in mind so that way I can ask the team in the future?
Absolutely. So we can move on now, and then you guys keep putting questions in, and we'll get them at the next opportunity.
Yeah, there'll be one very soon, so don't worry. Because we're going to talk a little bit about how to use Category Quest. So when I'm thinking about how am I going to add a game into a learning cycle, a training cycle, or some other thing, I need to figure out where does it best fit because a game is a tool that doesn't mean it can do anything and it will have strengths and weaknesses depending on what it is. So first we need to think about what are we trying to do or where does it fit? When I'm thinking about learning, I like to think about it in one of 6 phases, starting with introduction and ending with synthesis. So introduction is I'm completely new to the material, never seen it before, don't know who she is. I'm just seeing this right now and starting to get my bearings. With practice, it is I'm learning it, I'm starting to use it, but I'm still need hands-on work with it because it's not in my brain right now. Review, I know the material pretty much. I need a refresher or I need repetition and reinforcement to really solidify it. Self-assessment and assessment I like to separate because they have slightly different consequences and levels of stakes. So a self-assessment, that's demonstrating mastery to yourself. That's like taking a practice exam and then seeing, oh, did I actually know what I thought I knew when I was reviewing, or did I not? Whereas true assessment is I need to demonstrate mastery to someone else, and that typically has consequences. So that's when you sit down for your final exam. That's when you get your grade. That's when you try to get a certification and you have to have a certain amount to pass. So that is true assessment. And lastly, synthesis. When you've mastered the material so much that you're able to relate it to other information and other knowledge that you have elsewhere and start doing cool things with it. Category quest, firmly within practice and review. It is designed to have that element of reinforcement to refresh in a different way, in a fresh way, every time you play a bunch of material that ideally you have seen or at least heard of before. I would say that if you want it to be more practice-based, you should do this in a team setting because when you are first learning something, you are going to glom onto certain information and others will glom onto other information, either because it works with our brains a little bit better, we have personal interest in one thing versus another, or it's just that's what you happen to study or learn about that day. That's the training module you sat through that day. And so when you're in a team setting, just like in pub trivia, everybody can bring in their expertise and then you all can work together and as a whole make a lot of progress. I also find that when I'm practicing new material, if I can connect that material with someone that I know that knows that material, I am able to make that association with them. And that actually helps me learn it a lot better as opposed to it its only association, say, being a vocabulary sheet or being a single webinar, right? Review, really, really good with review. In general, this game is going to be a lot more fun if you know at least a little bit of the material, because that is when you're going to feel like you're playing it because you're engaging with the material you know. You're showing your own competency to yourself. I would not recommend this for introduction because this game if you did this as introduction, it would be like I handed you a stack of flashcards and says, "Hi, welcome to this new subject. Here you go, have fun." And then I just left. Really should have at least a base understanding of what you're doing or what the content is before you start the game, because let me tell you, getting a stack of flashcards is not fun. The important one that I really want to emphasize though, and I think this may seem like an assessment tool, but it is not. And this is why. So imagine we have a bunch of decks of cards, right? We have a deck of 4 cards. We only need to get 2 of them correct. I draw 1, I get it correct. I draw 2, I get it correct. I don't see the latter 2. Let's say someone else plays the game. They draw one of the cards I didn't draw the first time. They draw one of the other cards I didn't draw the first time. We both have drawn cards from that deck and we both got them correct, but we got completely different cards correct. Because of that, it is entirely feasible that 2 people could have exactly the same score and not have seen any of the questions that the other person did. So The data that you would be getting from the analytics page of this game, if you were trying to use that as an assessment, is not going to be good because you're comparing two people's competencies that could be wildly different. And also, you're trying to compare how competent someone was when they've, in relation to all the material, when they've only shown that they know some of the material. That makes sense? You've only seen 1/3 of the game in that particular session. How do you know that they know the other 2/3? For that reason, really strongly do not recommend using this as self-assessment or assessment. It is not going to give you the data that you need. Um, However, what we do recommend, because category quest cards are so similar to how trivia is implemented, if you want to use one of the our ELB Learning trivia game as an assessment, what you can do is you can take the category quest questions. You can either pull them directly or you can adapt them, make a trivia game, and then after the learners practice and review with category quest, you can have them take that trivia game as an assessment. So everyone will get the same questions, they'll have the same experience, and that way you can compare with good data player 1, player 2, player 3, player 4 against each other and against the content as a whole. That is how I would integrate those two together. So that way you have a flow from practice to assessment. This was important. And I want to pause if we have any more questions on that before we start making a game. Because again, it's like being able to know how to use the tool is honestly the most important part.
We did have another question from Al from a bit earlier. Yes,
Mhm.
the design seems to rely on color. Can we switch the pylons to different images for accessibility? And I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that word correctly.
Oh, pylons? We can switch colors. We'll get into that in the next section, and I will want to circle back to make sure that I actually address it. But we'll talk about that when we're making a game.
Awesome. I think we're caught up for the moment.
Okay, let's make a game. Oh, I think actually by the pylons you meant the pawns. So, we actually, that is a good point. I think what we had in the leaderboard is that yes, you have the color of the pawn that you chose. You also have the name of the person associated with that color pawn. And otherwise, because it's just your pawn on the board, whatever color you pick, it will be just you moving along the board. So, even though, yes, your pawn is only a color and not a shape, which would help with accessibility, I think we have tried to, and if we miss a spot, please feel free to let us know. We've made sure that any time that color is the only identifying factor, we added another. We also have symbols on the tiles for the board for that exact reason, because if you had just colors for categories like they do in Trivial Pursuit, who knows if you're on a red or a green tile if you're red-green colorblind, or blue and purple if you're purple-blue colorblind, wanting to make sure that there's multiple identifications besides color. So that is very high on our mind, and we're trying to keep an eye out for any places we've missed. But as far as the pawns go, I think that's how we've managed to sidestep color blindness in that way. Let us continue, though. So when you open up a category quest, this is what you see. It's very different if you've used any of our game builders before. We're very excited about it. So you see we have 4 sections: game, theme, features, and play. Got our save button, very important. And in the game section, we have our game sequence and we have a preview. We have live previews and it's so beautiful. Like, look at this. You can write dolphins and it live updates. So that way our title is dolphins. We can add a company logo like this dolphin and it appears immediately in the lower left corner. It is gorgeous. Um, in the preview alongside that, we have game sequence. So this is the order of appearance for all of the screens and content pretty much of the game. So we start with the start screen as one would. We also have an option for a pregame interstitial. So if we put in a title, there it is, and it auto updates, or we can disable it. So that would appear after the start screen. Then you have your registration screen next. This looks pretty familiar, yeah? This has, we have no authorization, authorized player list, single sign-on. Here's the toggle where you can add enable a team name like we had in our last session. Require registration as a toggle. Certain other features we'll talk about will require you to require registration of every learner that plays the game. But otherwise you don't necessarily have to. And if you want to enable that feature and it requires required registration, it will let you know. So that way you don't accidentally mismatch. And we have all of the fields you can add, like country, maybe it's optional. Neat. Then we have our categories with our preview board. Ah, it's so cool. So out of the box, when you open up a new game, you start with 3 categories with a placeholder puzzle, as well as the capstone. You'll note that the capstone doesn't have a delete button, unlike the other categories do, because you absolutely have to have a capstone category in order to play this game. But in this case, let's see, let's call this one cats. This category name is now cats for the capstone. And I actually, when I'm starting to make a game, we have this safety mechanism because if you add a bunch of puzzles and you want to delete the category but not the puzzles, we stop you from doing that right away. But when I first start making a game, I like to actually delete 2 of the categories and just make one miscellaneous. See, 3 to 6 categories recommended. But first we're going to start with a miscellaneous one. So placeholder question. You can see here we have a live update of the question. So we could say, are cats your best pet? The answer is yes. So you can change the answer yes or no. Add a puzzle. Let's see. This one is going to be a text input. What kind of animal is a lion? Answer, it is a cat. Here we have the feedback response correct and incorrect, as well as the toggle to add an interstitial. So you can see the preview updates with tabs, so you can see each instance of the card while you're editing. So that way you don't have the thought of, okay, well, is this picture gonna fit? Is the text gonna look weird? You know, what is it actually gonna look like? And then you don't have to play the game infinitely to try and hit this particular card to see what it looks like. It's so nice. Everyone on the team's excited about it. But yeah, you can add an image. Let's add another image, shall we? I like this one. Dolphin. Dolphins are pretty. Ta-da! And you can actually see if it works. We also have, you can add one image or you can add one video. You can add text. Again, you can also do bold and hyperlinks and have all of these, you know, very nice text editor functions. Or you can just get rid of that interstitial too. So now that we've started making this game, I realized that I actually have a lot of cat questions, and I did want my cat questions to be the capstone. So what am I going to do? Do I have to actually go into the capstone and retype everything? No, because that would suck. What you do is you go to the question or to the puzzle and you change its category to cats, and now you can see it's over in the capstone section. So let's go back here. Oop. And do that. Nope. We are QAing this game, I will say. There we go. Okay. I will make a note of that because, again, still QAing it. Got to figure that out. All right. So we have the 2 questions on the capstone. We have the miscellaneous is now currently empty. I have to say this is going to take a while. it's going to take a while to make this much content, especially because we want a lot of cards in each deck if we want people to keep playing our game and learning about cats and things. What are we going to do? Well, that's why we added a bulk upload function, because we knew that this game was going to have a lot of content and we wanted to make sure that you could build it quicker, you could reuse your content, and you can also work on the content with other folks before putting it into the game. In general, we recommend making your content outside of the game and then copy pasting or putting it into the game for archival reasons, so because it's a lot easier to edit, so multiple people can contribute at the same time. It's just a good practice and one that we use ourselves. But this is exciting because now we get to actually just upload it without copy pasting. We made a template so that you can download and use with your spreadsheet editor of choice. And fill in your categories, your puzzles, incorrect feedback, and any text for your interstitials. Very exciting. The one thing that we have found is that it will work with Excel 2021 and newer. It will not work with with Microsoft Excel that is older. The reason we found this out is because I use a copy from 2019 and it didn't work. If you use Microsoft Office 365 or whichever one is the like subscription where you have all of the things, that actually self updates to be the most recent version of Excel. So you are totally fine. Just don't be like me and try to use your legacy version from when you were in university. But my teammate Greg is extremely kind, and he took all of my dolphin fun facts and put them into a template for me because he's great. So let's upload that. The important thing to know about bulk upload is that it will replace everything that you have put into your capstone and your categories. So our questions about cats, the name of our categories, and our miscellaneous category, all those puzzles, they will be replaced by what is in the spreadsheet. That's why we have this little error message. Please heed it. But in this case, I'm okay with it. I am sure. And now guess what? We've got dolphins in film and television. We've got dolphin biology. We have dolphin diets and behaviors. And our capstone category is on river dolphins. So cool. So that just makes things a lot quicker. We've already greatly benefited from it. The last two sections in the game sequence is the leaderboard and the end. The leaderboard, usually in our games, we have an option to remove leaderboards, but because we wanted it to feel like you're playing a board game, even though it is a single player game, we opted instead to have an anonymization feature. So instead of having the team names or the names, the registration names, what it will do is it will swap out every person's name with a pre-generated pseudonym that's an adjective and an animal. So like practical guppy, courageous gerbil, stuff like that. So there is that level, there is a bit of removal from that competition, but also if it's a matter of privacy that you want to have anonymized leaderboards, we've allowed that in this case. You can just toggle that on. The end screen, you can add a learn more URL and change the text of that button, very similar to other games that we have. You'll see there's a little red asterisk next to game. That's because we changed a whole lot. And so if we press the save button, those changes have taken and now the game is saved. So let's move on to theme. Oh, this is exciting. All right. So, this got updated just today. I'm very excited. So we have two tracks that you can use, two pieces of music now that you can change which one plays in your game. I think the one that you heard was Rainy Days if it was very chill vibe before I turned it off. We also have a new one from the same artist called Banana Candy, and you actually can play a preview of each of these. I'm not going to press them because I don't want to have it go for 30 seconds and not actually be able to hear it. But you can hear a preview and you can choose which track you want. Everything on this screen is customizable, everything in this preview. So we've got this new dolphin game. We can add a dolphin background. I love this little kind of sherbet, uh, what is it? Ocean look. So cool. Let's go with this vibe. You can change the category names if you want from here, and they will update in the other tab where we just were. Any of the button colors are also updatable. So let's actually change that first. I like a purple. We can see if black's more readable. Nah, I think I like the purple. So then let's go back to the board. And I want to change this icon because a coat hanger doesn't really make sense for film and television. I've got 8,000 icons to choose from. So let's try a, nope, TV. I love the little retro TVs with the antennae. There we go. And look, it is updated. But this gray is kind of dull. I think I'm going to go with like kind of a fun kind of coral red because of the red carpet. There we go. Now it's updated. All right, dolphin biology. Let's do DNA, root of life, and this brown, I'm not feeling it. I usually think of science as being green, so let's try this shade. Yeah, it looks pretty good. One of the things that I actually like to do is when I am picking colors, I like to look for color palettes that have hex codes. I find a color palette that I like, and then I copy in the hex code or the RGB into this color picker. But we also can, with this color picker, pick out a color here. So look, we've got the background picked out. Let's say that I really want this shade of salmony pink. Ooh, okay. Dolphin diets. Yeah. So let's do a squid because I know that they like to eat squid. Think it looks cute with the pink. And then dolphin behavior is actually kind of like the little speech bubble with the quotations, but I think I want to change this to a more tropical yellow. Beautiful, beautiful. It looks like a mixed drink. And you can see the progress tracker is also updated. And if we go back to the game, say we go to dolphin diets, do dolphins chew their food? Yeah, I don't know. Well, yes, they chew with their teeth, but more importantly, the card colors have updated with the correct colors, and also the button colors have updated. So you can see immediately how everything looks. All right, so we've done our game, we've done our theme. Next is features. The most important feature is the category completion threshold. So this is how many cards you need to answer correctly in order to complete the category. Let's do, I will say if you have more required than you have category questions for, it will throw up this error and will let you know which categories you need to add more cards to, which is very nice. Let's not do 9 though. That seems like overkill. Let's do 3. And if you go back here, you can see now there are 3 pips instead of 1. So that is updated automatically too. The time per question, so that's the time bonus. If we don't want to have a time bonus, maybe we do want this to be more for practice as opposed to review, we can keep it at 0. Otherwise, I like to add it to, I think I did 20 for the one that we tried together. Session limits and reveal correct answer on incorrect submission. So if you get a question wrong, if you get a card wrong, we don't show you the correct answer automatically because we want you to keep playing and trying them again. You can add the correct answer and the incorrect feedback, but some people, especially if this is more of a practice game, we got some feedback that they would want to see what the correct answer is right away. So if that is you and you want that in your game, you can toggle it on, and whenever you get it wrong, you'll see what you answered, if it was correct or incorrect, and then the correct answer will be highlighted or indicated to the player in some way. Session limits. So ideally, I like to have people play this a lot, again, for reinforcement. But if for whatever reason you want them to only play for a certain number of times, you can limit the number of sessions. I might just say 99. That sounds like a good high number. You also can set the session limit start date and end date. So maybe you want it to be Monday through Friday, and then because you want to have an assessment on, the following Monday. Then then within that time frame, they can play the game as many times as they want. Or a certain number of times if you set the session limit to a lot lower than 99. Um, this is the setting that requires registration because that's how it tracks how many times each person has played or if that person is playing within the right session period. There's also the last global feature in this area is the privacy policy. So you can include a consent checkbox, see that there. You can add your own privacy policy URL and the name of your group and or like a title for that privacy policy URL if you so choose. I'm gonna remove the session limits because they should play about dolphins forever. See the asterisks, let's save. Do, do, do. Awesome. And the last step is the play step. So this is where you set your save as name. That's not your game title. So the game title is, if we go to start, what was here. This is what in your admin screen, your list of games is what it's called. So in my case, I called it the webinar demo sandbox because I think that's what it is. From there, it is you translated into a game URL, a unique game URL, so that way you can copy it and send it off to people or launch it directly. Um, I could even add I could even add dash dolphin if I wanted to hint at what is inside. It doesn't have to match, but so long as it's unique, it's fine. This is also where you get all of, because you are assumedly ready to play the game or ready to send the game somewhere, this is where your LMS integration and where your embedding lives. So to embed a game, you add the width and pixels you want in it to be wide or high, and then it generates an embed code that you can copy and use wherever you need it to be embedded. The game completion in SCORM, you set a percentage and then you can add we have toggles here for SCORM similar to how we handle score in other games. And then you can download your SCORM file however you need. We also have integration with Docebo, so you can publish it to Docebo here. And yeah, then if you want, we can play the game. So I'm gonna pick my game piece real quick. Skip the tutorial. Ta-da! And you've got a game. So we are very excited and hopeful that this will come out in May. We do have to do a fair bit of QA, both because it is for the board game and also for the game builder. We need to QA both of those and really just make sure that it's like as best as possible for y'all when we launch it. But until then, I can answer some more questions, and I just wanted to thank you for joining.
Wonderful. We do have some more questions that have come in and some clarifications that
Mhm.
a few members of the team who are listening in were able to give. I'll start with that. So a question was asked earlier, if you're hosting a training and use this game, will you, as the host, be notified when all teams complete their board? So we got some clarification on that. The category quest game resides in the training arcade. So currently there is not a communications mechanism within the platform that notifies the admins of touch points, such as like this team finished per, a question. But the platform admins can go into the dashboard at any time to pull up the up to the minute analytics
Yeah.
regarding players who have played the game and all related stats such as scoring, question and answer accomplishment, etc.
Yep. So here's my webinar demo sandbox. You can see I played and I didn't do anything here.
Yeah, and the admins can see that.
Mhm.
So, okay, some questions. So, if you wanted to use category quests for introduction or self-assessment, could you make all the cards in a category required for the learner so the learner sees all the questions in that category instead of some?
Yep. That is a exactly the way that you would get around that. And especially if you wanted it to be self-assessment, I think that's a really good idea. When it comes to the introduction, I would also, if you wanted to use it as introduction, I would recommend taking advantage of the feedback and the interstitials, just adding a little bit more extra content, a little extra care when it comes to framing and educating the moment that they get a card right or wrong. That will, sorry, my cat sneezed from the closet. Bless you. Um, that will help your learners when they're just starting to get a hang of of the material. But yeah, that's exactly what I would do.
Awesome. That's a great workaround. And I just noticed that we're creeping up on the next top of the hour. So if you guys need to jump, we understand this will all be in the recording, so you won't miss anything. And the recording will be sent next week, so you'll get all this if you have to jump. But another question, Jean asked about the bulk downloads. You were talking about the limitations with Excel. Does it
Mhm.
work for Google Sheets?
Yes, it does.
Fit. Another question, will you be creating AI question generation for this game like we did for trivia? Do you know if that's coming?
We're looking into it. We need to figure out what that actually would involve. But that is in our list of things to investigate for sure.
Awesome. How would you embed this into the Rockstar learning platform?
Ooh, I do not know the answer to that question. I'm sorry. I'm not sure who would actually know the answer to that question either. So Casey, we should figure that out.
Yes. Okay. I will make a note of that too and get back to Jean on that one.
I will say though, if that learning platform has embeds, then that would probably be the best way to do it, or at least the most obvious way that I can think of.
Okay. Another question, the last one actually, I believe. Um, can our org sign up to be a beta tester for this game? We already paid for trivia
Ooh,
and the other games,
that's a good question. And I don't know, but that is kind of an exciting question.
isn't it?
We should figure that out because that would be really neat. And I'm also very flattered that you would want to actually beta test this. That makes me very happy. Thank you.
Right? And I see another question from Jean asking, is this available now?
Nope.
Not quite. It's coming,
No, it's coming. We're still QAing it. We need to, hit it from all angles and see if it breaks and make sure that we have some space to really improve, add some final polishes and improvements before we send out this game to everybody, as well as the CMS. That's partly why, because it's both the oh, oops, because it's both the game itself and all of the work that has gone into here since it's so new. We need to make sure that we have it ready for everybody.
awesome. I think those are all of the questions.
Well, thank you again for joining me for the first look at Category Quest. Again, took a lot of time to work on this, and the team really enjoyed getting to make a board game for you all.
Yes, we're getting lots of thank yous in the chat, and Lori mentioned that she loves when you break out into a quick little song. And I do.
Thank you.
I also appreciate when she does that, Lori. So this has been great. Thank you all so much for your engagement and your questions and just being excited about this game. We are very excited. And thank you so much, Lydia, for your expertise and sharing your baby with us. We appreciate it so much. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Yay, thank you.